Okay, so let's very quickly start off the day by just doing a small little recap and review of what we created and accomplished last week. So here's the state of the game, and I believe this is the saved state at the conclusion of class. Let's just see what we get. Yep, so there's my game. I'm going to run around. I can get all those boxes. They disappear. Bloop, awesome. And then now that I have all three of those boxes, those red boxes, the blue sphere disappears, right? And if you remember from the prototype of the idea that we talked about last week, is that this blue sphere wouldn't be destroyed inside of our game until those other three red boxes were created, right? Let's just review our scripts real fast and kind of get real up close and intimate once again with the structure that we created, because in every sense we're going to tie into that structure that we worked in and physically did last week. So let's look at Magic Cube Controller first. And bear with me for a second while Mono Develop slowly opens. If the lovely folks at Unity are listening to our live stream, they should do everything they can to make Mono Develop open faster, because it just takes forever. It's a simple app. All right, let's take a look at what we wrote. Now, if you remember correctly, the Magic Cube Controller, this is the script that was driving a couple different important ideas on the blue cubes themselves. Now, take me through just what you can see here. What's the logic and the structure of the code that's being established in the script? Let's start with the first function. What is this doing? Yeah, James.
I think it says it pretty much in that last line of it. The last line, if blah, 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 destroy game object.
You got it. Okay, so let's just walk through the logic. And you're absolutely right, James. It says function on collision enter, right? So the moment that something touches this game object, right? So the moment that two things collide, so in our case we have our game controller, right, which is our player. The moment that something with a rigid body touches this object, we're going to collect all of that collision information, right? And we're going to store it in what? What word is that collision information stored within? Nope. The word hit, okay? Because that's where we're storing all this collision information. So here's the function. And then we store all of that information in this variable. And we're saying, hey, any collision information, doesn't matter who, doesn't matter what, how big, where it comes from, I want you to keep all of that in a briefcase called hit. Okay? Now we got to do something with that information, and this is where it gets a little bit more granular, because what if we had some like enemy AI like cruising around our scene? We don't want them to accidentally bump into our cube and cause it to be destroyed, right? We only want it to be destroyed and influenced by the player. So that's why we added that next line of code in. This is where that Boolean conditional statement comes in. We say if something that hits us, hit.gameObject.tag, if something that hits us is tagged with player in finger quotes, okay? Now we get to do something, right? And we're flipping a switch. We say global vars.magicCubeActivated equals true. Now, this is a cool way of referencing and leveraging variables on exterior or external scripts, right? We actually had three scripts sending data to and from each other. We're now creating a network of scripts that are influencing the function of our game, okay? So we're flipping a Boolean that's being housed on that global variable script, right? And on the next line, it says global var, so back to that warehouse of information again, right? What are we doing to the variable cube points? Remember this from last week? What's plus plus mean? To help you out, let's just revisit the contents of that global variable script. As I mentioned just a brief moment ago, in every sense, these global vars kind of turns into a warehouse of data. It's a good place for us to park some information that we can access at any point from anywhere inside the entire game itself. It's an interesting way of putting this together, okay? And since we make it a static variable, it's now available to be influenced by anything inside of our entire game, okay? which is different from that of a private variable, which can only be influenced by its own script. It can't be accessed externally from a different script, right? Okay, so we have two variables inside of our warehouse. One's called magic cube activated, and as you can see, it's a Boolean, right? This is an on-off, true, false, 1, 0 type environment. And then the second one is called cube points. Now, specifically, what is cube points? Yeah, exactly. And more specifically, it's a number. Okay? How do I know that it's a number? Yeah. It does, but I don't have to attach that number to it. I can just leave its definition in place, and the computer would understand that the value that we're preserving in this variable is a number. Yeah?
The S on points?
Nope. The S on points, that's just a name. That could be, Pat's crazy hairdo. It's just a name. Integer. INT is short for integer. And as we established last week, there's two types of numerical values that we can create inside of our scripting environment. One is an integer. What is the other one? So we have integer, which is 1, 2, 3, like that. What's the other one called? Oh, I'm so happy we're reviewing this. Float. Okay? Now, how is an integer value different from that of a float value? Decimal points. Yeah, with a float value, it can be 1.1 or 2.7. Okay? You get more granular values coming from a float value, integer, or it's a float variable. Now, at times, we're going to want to have a lot of fine-tuned information. Other times, just whole numbers are going to give us the job that we want. Okay? And what you're designing and what you're creating in code, in every sense, is going to determine what type of value numerically that you create. Okay? All right, so those are our two global variables. Okay? Let's return back to our Magic Cube controller script and look at what we're doing here. Okay? So let's stay with that first function. On collision enter, we're capturing all the collision information and we're storing it in that word called hit. And then once again, once we start asking that question is of if something hit me that's tagged with the word player, what are we going to do? Yeah.
That's going to activate the script.
And more importantly, it's going to change the values of the variables on that global var script, right? Because what's that single equal sign mean? It says global vars dot magic cube activated equals true. What does a single equal sign mean? Set. That's when we're changing something, right? We're changing a value. We're physically going in and altering its state. So we're flipping our variable state, our Boolean variable state, from false to true. Okay? We'll come back to that in a minute, right? And then what else are we doing once we hit this cube? Go down one line, global vars dot cube points plus plus. What in the hell is that? What's plus plus do? Now think of it in the term of a number, right? We know from what we just talked about that cube points is a number, okay? What's plus plus establish? An increase in value of the current state of that variable, right? So if the current state of the variable was 5, if we did plus plus, what would it go to? 6, right? So on and so forth. We're adding a whole integer to that variable, okay? And then lastly, on line 9 there, what are we doing? Destroying it. And we're physically removing it from the hierarchy of my scene, okay? All right. So all of this jazz, so this is only evaluated when something hits my blue cube, right, or excuse me, my red cubes, okay? Now, what is it doing every single cycle of the game? It's updating, and we're saying, hey, if magic cube activated is true, make sure it's false, okay? Because we only want it to be true for a split second, right? We only want this that Boolean operation to be active for just a brief moment. There always has to be some point inside of our script that turns the Boolean back to false, okay? Nothing's going to flip the switch the other direction for us automatically. We have to define when that happens, and I'm doing it on every frame of the game. All right. Now we had one other script. The blue sphere controller, and this is where it gets fun, right? So what happens here? We're asking a question, right? What question are we asking? And when are we asking it? Let's start with the easy one. When are we asking a question in this script? Yeah. No, well, that's the question, right? But when are we asking that question? Always, okay? Because we're always checking to see what, James? Bingo, right? Because what happens when the cube points variable equals 3? We're going to destroy the blue sphere. You got it? How long after that question is answered will the sphere be destroyed? 2 seconds. Yeah, you got it. Okay? So once we register 3 points, if you will, inside of our game, the blue sphere is going to be destroyed, okay, after 2 seconds. Now, this is really cool stuff. Maybe we should start communicating these variables to our gamer and thus enter the on-screen GUI system in Unity. There's some really interesting things that are being done here on this front. It is a little bit different. It's extraordinarily powerful, and let's start looking at some of the underpinnings of how this UI system works. Because there's a couple things in here that I want to communicate to our player. Let's do the easy stuff first, okay? All right. Okay, let's do the easy stuff first. Let's create a simple menu, okay? And that's a nice, soft introduction to working with the UI system inside of Unity. So I'm going to do this. I want to make a new scene file. Not a new project, just the new scene file. And I'm going to save this scene file as main menu. There we go. All right. Okie dokie, right? So in order for us to work with some UI stuff here in Unity, there's a couple things that we need to create first, okay? The UI system was overhauled at the beginning of the beginning of the 5 cycle for Unity, and there's some really great stuff in there, although it's a little unintuitive at first, but once you get a little bit of experience building the UI, I think you're going to find that it's not that bad, okay? Now, the only way to learn this stuff is to get your hands dirty with it, so, it's good practice to kind of follow along. Let's start building a simple little UI, okay? All right, so here's what we got to do. Let's go up and let's go in to the UI system of our game object pull-down menu, okay? And you can see that there's a lot of different UI things that we can build in the app itself, okay? We can just put raw text in there. We can put an image, okay? We can make buttons and toggles and sliders. It's pretty comprehensive, the things that we can make. However, let's just initially create a text element. Keeping it simple at first, let's just create some on-screen text. Now, the moment that you create an on-screen text element, well, for me, it's going to think about it. It likely crashed because it's just been kind of one of those days for me. There we go. All right. So let's look at first in our editor, way up here at the top. Okay. So what in the world are we seeing up here? Let me make it a little bit bigger so you guys get a good sense of it. What in the world is that? Okay. This is called a canvas, all right? And in every sense, this is a graphical representation of the boundaries, the border of our screen. Now, here's a good practice to get into before we go too much further about working with boundaries, okay? Down here in our game window, well, a number of pull-down menus, right? This first one is default is free aspect, which is kind of a dangerous place to live because now we're every time we just change the window, you see how that canvas rectangle in the editor is also changing its shape? This is kind of a dangerous environment because we're really not authoring, framing, and creating our content that's paired to a specific screen resolution or aspect ratio. Going forward, here's what I would suggest that you do, because you're going to find this yields you a very, very predictable result. Change your aspect ratio from free aspect to 16 by 9 or 16 by 10. This is going to get you very, very, very close to a modern day aspect ratio. Some computer monitors are 16 by 10. Some are 16 by 9. I believe the iMacs that we're sitting in front of are all 16 by 9, which is really great. Although now that I think about it, maybe 16 by 10. Believe it or not, the menu screen at the top, all the where you find all those pull-down menus, that's what forces it into 16 by 10. But one of these two is going to get you very, very, very close to what the final representation of your game boundaries are going to be, or the screen boundaries, that is, okay? 1024 by 768. I'm so very happy that we've graduated from that world, okay? That just makes me a happy camper. All right, so now if I change this in here, the aspect ratio of my canvas isn't changing at all, and that's what I'm after, okay? Just the aspect ratio. All right. So let's start, now that we understand that this white box is a visual representation of our screen, it's a little bit easier to understand the role of this thing down over here, okay? This is our actual text element. Oh, but I apologize. I got a little ahead of myself. I wanted just to show you the hierarchy real fast before. So here's our canvas, okay? Everything, all of our UI stuff that's going to go inside of our screen is going to be a child member of this canvas here. Here's our text element. We get a whole bunch of properties. We'll go over this in a minute, okay? We also have an event system, and this event system allows us to send information and detect certain inputs. That's a good thing for us, okay? All right. So let's start messing around with our text element. And with it selected, naturally down here inside of our editor, the move tool will allow us to move it around. Okay? It's got to be in the canvas. And the moment my text element goes into the canvas, you can see it being drawn in the center of my screen here, which is what I am after. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Let's get a little up close and personal. All right. Aha, wonderful. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just make a play button here. Okay. All right. So now, the properties of all of our UI elements really kind of come home to roost. And naturally, there's a couple things that we can and should look to do. First and foremost, let's go over here and check out, excuse me, and check out all the character information. Okay. A lot of this stuff is kind of obvious, okay? However, the font stuff is where it gets really kind of unique. If we wanted to change the font of our on-screen text, let me just increase the font size a little bit. Oh, now here at 27 or oh, where is it? Yeah, 27. I'm good. But the moment what if I want like a big play button, right? If I increase that size, what happens? It goes outside of its local bounding box. And I recognize that it may be kind of hard to see. See this light gray line that's going around this play button? That's its local bounding box, okay? Now, this local bounding box can and should be adjusted. There's a number of things you can do. However, well, here's the easy one. This horizontal overflow, from wrap to overflow. And now that should allow you to make it bigger. Oh, nope. It's the vertical one too. Both got to go to overflow. Yeah, and now it's going to extend past the outside of that box. However, this is not a great idea, okay? Because that box that it lives in is where the mouse is going to detect this text. So if you think about it, that inside box is where it's going to register as a button, okay? So if we want to be able to go and click on this button, the only place that the user would be able to register a click, or where the computer would register that user click, is on the inside. Click, 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 in this little box. So if they clicked at the bottom of the Y, ain't nothing would happen, right? Because it's only going to be registering mouse input events, or any input event, inside of this small little gray box. So we need to change that little box, okay? And we can do so by changing, not that one, I grabbed the wrong one. Oops. I'm just having a day today. It's this tool right here. Okay, this tool allows us to select our text. Yeah. I can go in and change the size of its local bounding box. Okay, this is called the rect tool. We can still move it around, so really nothing's changed all that much. We're just changing the zone, if you will, where an input can happen. Okay, back to fonts for a second. Check it out. If you look carefully at the inspector here, there's a little target. A font is an asset that needs to be imported into Unity and then assigned to this channel here. Now, there's 1,080 million places online that you can find fonts. There's a great tool here on the Mac that allows us to find fonts pretty fast. It's called Font Book. Now, I am opening Pandora's box here, okay? And I need you guys to promise me not to mess up all the fonts that are installed on these machines, because our computer services guys would be very, very grumpy with me if I did that. But check it out. It's really easy to find fonts, okay? Let's just let's do Font Book. There we go. Font Book is an application that runs on our Mac. It's pretty great. I love Font Book. It makes it very, very easy to find fonts, save fonts, make collections of fonts that are assigned to a user. Let's do something, I don't know. Let's do Comic Sans. Let's do Comic Sans and just really make all the graphic designers in our world just angry. I'm okay with that. Let's hide mono develop here for a second. And here's what we have to do, okay? We're going to right-click on it and do Show in Finder. And then here's what I need you to do. And this is, you have to help me out with this. We have to copy this. If we move it from this directory, it's not going to work on our computers anymore. So if you hold down the Option key, okay? You hold down the Option key and then drag it to your desktop. You see that little green plus sign under the cursor? That's making a copy of this file. So we're not moving it from its original location. We're making a copy of it. So I'm leaving the original in its current location. Let's get rid of all this jazz. Yeah, just delete them all. Yeah, delete everything in that folder. You'll be fine. Trust me. No, yeah, don't do that. That would be bad. I remember I worked at a studio in which we gave all of our interns kind of an exit test. We called it our Jedi training, our Padawan trials, right? Because if you can pass the Padawan trials, then you can be part of the crew. And I remember that we had one intern that was really anxious to make everyone happy. And this person always said yes to any question that was given to them before thinking about what it is that they were being asked. And we asked this person to open up the Unix terminal, which is the command line interface on the Mac, and type in rm ***, command line code for, does anyone know what rm in Unix means, the code that gets fired off? It's remove. Okay, rm is the code for remove, so basically delete. And whenever you do *** in a Finder, what are you asking it to do? ***, huh? And it's every file, right? Because *** is how you search for things, right? So you can do like star.jpg and that's like find me just the JPEGs in that folder, right? So if you do ***, you're basically saying remove everything. Delete everything on the entire machine, and the computer's just going to go ahead and do it, right? Because computers are just going to accept the command and then fire it off and evaluate it. There is no safeguard to deleting every single file on your machine. So this individual, we asked them to do it to see if they learned anything about working inside of a command line environment, because in a studio system, you're absolutely going to be working in a command line environment. You're not going to be working in the OS, right? Everything is Linux or Unix-based at these big studios. So we asked this person to go open up a terminal, type in rm ***, thinking that they would go, haha, silly, that's going to delete everything on the machine. And this person went, RM star dot. And at that point, like 8 of us jumped on the keyboard to make sure that they didn't actually finish the command and hit enter real fast. And we said, okay, we think you still need to learn a little bit more before you're going to be part of our team. Because if you just kind of blindly said, sure, I'll delete everything, that's someone who's not thinking. Anyways, let's import this font file into our Unity project directory. Luckily for us, yeah, go ahead. Sure, absolutely. So I'm doing it through FontBook. You can go on the web. You can find thousands upon thousands of fonts. Okay. Here's how I did it. I'm just going to use the bold version of Comic Sans. If you right-click on it, Show in Finder, it's going to bring open a Finder window. It's going to take you to the folder and automatically select the file that's responsible for creating the Comic Sans bold font face, right? And then hold down your Option key. What? Back issues? I don't think that one's currently installed.
Back issues, like I'm getting old and I have back issues, or is it like issues like I gotta look it up. I didn't know the name.
Melissa, did you get your question answered? Did you figure it out? So you hold on the Option key, drag it to your desktop, ready to rock and roll. Okay. All right, so now that we have a file, a font file, we're just going to import it into our Unity project just like any other asset. Let's go find it. It's just chilling on my desktop. There it is. Bloop. Okay. All right, so now that I have that Comic Sans.ms bold font file in my game, I can load it as the font file for this text channel. So let's just do it real fast. There it is. And now I have a lovely Comic Sans button. Huzzah. It worked. Let me change the color of my font real fast from this gray to black. Or this gray to white, excuse me. Okay. So the cool thing about working with these text elements inside of Unity is that we can make them look and behave however it is that we want. Another great thing about working with these text elements or these UI elements inside of Unity is that we can add components to them. We can start to customize both their behavior and their appearance. Check it out. All of these game objects, this text game object, and let's just name it real fast. Instead of it being text, let's just do button play. Okay? And I always like to do that. I always like to define what it is inside of my hierarchy. It's a button. More specifically, it's the play button. Okay? And now check it out. If we go back over here into our inspector, we can add a component to it, right? There's this entire UI section. There we go. And look at all the different things in here that we can add to this text component, right? So let's add, add a button. There we go. And now, with that button component associated with this text object, we can begin to create a very complex system here that will allow us to drive action. Okay. Now, buttons and UI elements, things that we physically need to select, have to have some lines of code associated with it so that we can go in and drive a behavior. Okay. We can physically ask it to do something. It's not going to automatically do something for us, right? So let's write the code first, or at the very least create the script, and then we'll write the code, and then wire that in to our buttons, okay? And this is the part that becomes really important. See there it says on click, okay? That's the area that we're working towards populating. We have to create some scripts that define what's going to happen when we click, okay? And then we're going to wire that in to that on click function. I think once you see it here in a second, you go, I got it, okay? So let's write some code here that's going to define exactly what the computer is going to ask us to do when we click. Okay? All right. So let's create a new script. I'm going to call this script, let's do button play. You know, we already have a game object called button play, so let's just call this button play controller. There we go. I don't like to double up the names of my game objects. It just makes everything nice and clean and sure there's no conflicts or errors that will pop up in the actual environment itself. All right, here we go. Let's open this up in MonoDevelop and start writing something that will allow us to generate the action that we're after. Now, there's a couple things in here that we're going to need to do. Hold on 2 seconds. I just accidentally clicked off. Oh my goodness. I accidentally clicked off of my notes. Here we go. Okay. All right. All right, so let's see if we can register a very small interaction with our button, right? Like everything, it's easy to prototype and test something with very simple commands that we already know and love. And then when we're confident that at the very least the machine is working, we can expand it into something that's more complex. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a simple little function here. We don't actually need any of this jazz. Okay, so we just need to delete it. And here's what we're going to start with. Okay, let's start with function on mouse down. And as one might imagine, what are we going to be asking the computer to do in here? Yeah, you got it. And let's just do another simple debug. I'm going to put you clicked me. There we go. Awesome. And that's it. That's all we're going to do initially, right? Because we just need to create some sort of function that we can test against, okay? So when we click, or when we tell the computer to click, we should see something printed into our console, okay? So let's start wiring this all together now. Okay, let's go back to our button. And you know, we're done with the text element, the text component, and now we need, oops, I apologize. We're going to start working with the button component of this game object, okay? So there's a couple things in here that we need to look at before we get going too forward. Okay, we have the normal color of our button, the highlighted color. This is when we roll in the pressed button, as one might imagine. Let's see, the normal color is going to be white. What do we want the highlight color to be when we roll in? Let's make it obvious, like red. There we go. And then the pressed color will make just another obvious color. How about blue? That way it's real easy to see against the red. Okay, now let's play the game. Yeah, there we go. And you can see that when, yep, awesome. So the button works, but it's not actually doing anything. But it functions as a button. I mouse in, it changes, it goes red, right? I clicky click, it goes blue for a brief second. That's what we're after. Now we need to actually begin to wire it into that script that we created so that an action is generated when we click. And this is where the setup gets a little bit more complicated, and I wish they would make it a little bit easier. Oh, one other thing, you also have some transition, this fade duration that you can kind of mess around with, because when you roll over it, it fades in and out. It fades. You can play around with that if you'd like. All right. So this is where it gets really important, okay? Because what we need to do here is begin to populate this on-click function that's on the game object itself. And notice that there's a little plus sign down there. So let's just do it, plus sign. Now it's going to ask us a couple different things, okay? We want, first and foremost, I apologize, this menu down here will determine when this entire action is evaluated. And when it's on runtime only, okay, that's only going to work when we build the game and when we're running this game externally from the Unity editor. Clearly, we want to be able to prototype and kind of understand if this stuff is working here in the editor. So we want to change this from runtime only to editor and runtime. That way we can test inside of Unity what's going to be working. Okay. Now this next part is where it gets a little funky because we need to pick a game object that currently has a script on it. Okay. Now did we put this script on anything? No, we didn't. So we had to put our script on something so that it knows what to evaluate. So here's button play controller, and I'm just going to add this as a component to the button play game object. Yep, there it is down there. And then in the button component itself, this none, the object that's going to load in, think of it kind of like a warehouse that includes the script that has the command on it. Let's go find button play. Now, the moment we do this, check it out. This next column becomes populated. If we open it up, here's the script, button play controller. That's what we're after. And then specifically, on mouse down. Everything else are things that Unity is pulling to the surface. But we want to access that command, that debug.log that we put in the on mouse down function. Okay? So what we're basically saying here is when you click the button, go to this game object, this script, this function, and do whatever it says on the inside of that. Okay? Bloop. Okay. Let's give it a go, see what happens. Make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see. So mouse in, mouse out. Hover states are working. And then I clicked. Yeah, rock and roll. You clicked me shows up. It got printed to the console down at the bottom of my screen. And now it has some really good honest feedback as to if this thing is working or not, right? It's a great way to work, especially when you're fleshing out new mechanics to your game. Prototype in its most simple state. Prototype within a system that you're very comfortable with. Printing something to the console is a great way to get feedback whether or not this crazy system's working. Okay? Now, the part that gets people really confused is the connection between the script and the button itself. So let's review that again. Stop the game. Okay? And let's just walk through the structure that we had to create to drive the correct action. So I have a game object here. This is the text GUI game object, right? Of course, it has the button component associated with it. I also created a script called button play controller. And I placed that script on this game object, right? There it is, right here. Here's that button controller script. In this on-click menu, of course, I hit the little plus sign. Here, let's just do it. I'll get rid of it. We'll walk through everything again. Okay? We hit the plus sign. We change this menu drop-down from runtime only to editor and runtime so we can see it working in the editor. Now we have to pick the game object that houses all of this script information. And this could literally be any game object. Some gamers, and this is a really great way of working, they'll have an empty game object inside of their scene that's just managing all the GUI stuff. And that's fine, right? So, yes, ma'am, question? What computer number are you, Melissa? 13. Let's take a look-see. All right. I know you can. Here we go. Okay. So let's take a look here. So you have your button. This is button play. Okay. So where are you getting lost here? There's one thing that that's how you change the color of the text, right? Yeah, because there's one thing that we're missing here. Go ahead and close out your color picker for a second and go to the bottom of your inspector where it says Add Component. And we need to go scroll down a little bit on that list till you see UI. And then you need to add the button component to it. So we can have text on screen that doesn't serve any, that's not an interactable button, right? It's just text, right? And you'll see that in play here in a second. And then we can also have text on screen that will act as a button. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in here, okay? So that's the one thing you're missing, Melissa, okay? And now that you have that, you can go in, you can define all of that jazz too. All right. So back to this on-click part of the button creation process. Editor and runtime, roger that. Let's find the game object that has the script that we want to access. It's button play. There it is. It's loaded in, and the moment we hit OK, you can see that this secondary column now becomes active. And what we're looking for is the script, this thing right here. See how it's finding all the different components inside of the entire network here? I'm sorry, all the components of this game object. This is a component of the game object, so it's showing up in the list. And then specifically, we wanted to go on mouse down. Okay? We wanted to evaluate the contents of on mouse down when we click. What's powerful about this system and why we can do multiple things is that one button can really determine a number or drive a number of different actions. Like, for example, what if you wanted to reset or restart your game, right? On one click, right, I can now send a message to a number of different scripts at the exact same time that will reset all my variables, populate my environment with all the enemy, close all the doors. It's a fast way of sending, on one click, sending a lot of different information to separate component pieces. All right, let's test it, because we always like to test it. Let's play the game. Oh, let's clear my console real fast so I can see if it actually works. Let's play the game. And mouse in, rock and roll. Mouse in, rock and roll. I clicky click. Boom shakalaka. You clicked me. Aha. So it works. We've proven that it works. Now, let's actually have it do something a little bit more complex. Writing stuff to the console is cute and fun. It's a great part of our prototyping system. But let's go back to Mono Develop and actually have it do something now. Okay? I heard some folks talking about this before class started today. But what's the line of code that allows us to load a level? And the folks that were talking about it, you were absolutely right, by the way. Say one of them. Very similar. It's application. Okay. Dot load level. Okay. Now, application.load level is the command, but we need to get a little bit more specific. So it gets concluded with a pair of parentheses and naturally a semicolon. What goes inside of here is the name of the level. All right. Let's be really certain. I want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly and writing the code correctly. Does anyone remember the keyboard shortcut that will allow me to take the selected text and search it against the code library on the Unity documentation? Hold down the command key, and then it's the quote. Okay? Command quote. No. Yeah. Application.load level. So here's the actual command in the Unity documentation. Let's just make sure that we're passing all the variables in there correctly. Yep, I am. Looks like things are good. I always like to triple check. Well, this is the C# one. Let's look at JavaScript. Yep, application.load level, and then we tell it which level to load. Okay? In quotes. Let's return to Mono Develop. Get that. I don't even know what my other level is called. It's just called level 1. Okay, that makes sense to me. Let's get our quotes in there. Boop, boop. Level 1. Save our game. And when we return to Unity, you're going to find something here that's going to be a showstopper. Let's just play the game at the moment. Roll in, clicky click. Uh-oh. Get an error. Scene level 01 couldn't be loaded because it hasn't been added to the build settings. Okay? And this is a really important part of getting all this stuff to work together, is these build settings. If you look at the way what we've crafted here, we have two different Unity scene files. We have level 1 and main menu. Okay? Both of these need to be included inside of the build settings. Okay? So the application knows which games to export from the app when we build it. Build settings. Okay? Add that one. There's main menu. The one, this is, I've forgotten the name of what this is exactly called. I think it's the index number. Okay? Whatever level has an index number of 0 is going to be the game or the level, the scene that is initially launched and loaded when you open the application. So if you have like a main menu, as I do, okay, we want to make sure that the main menu's index number is 0 so that it's the first thing the gamer sees. Okay? Let's get level 1 in there. And then after that, it really doesn't matter in which order all of your levels appear. They don't need to be sequential or even in gameplay order, because we're going to be accessing these levels by their name, okay, when we load or launch or cycle to a different level inside of our game. Okay, so now let's try it again. I'm going to clear my console. Try it again. Aha, no errors. I hover in, it goes red, white, clicky click, loads my level. The light maps haven't been baked, so they haven't been evaluated yet, but it worked. Okay. Whee! There's 1. There's 2. Bloom. Did I get it? I don't know if I got it. I didn't get it. There we go. And then 2 seconds later, blue sphere gets destroyed. Cool, huh? Now, there's a, in a main menu, there's one other thing that we can do, right? On a main menu, we can play, and we always want to give the gamer an opportunity to quit the game, too. So let's do this exact same thing once again, but with a quit button, okay? The command to quit your game is a little bit different from that of loading a level. To make life easy exclusively on myself, I'm going to go into my button play game object and simply duplicate it. You can do that, by the way. This one, unsurprisingly, is going to be quit. And of course, we need to change the label on our text component from play to quit. We also probably should go in and change its location inside the scene. That makes sense to me, right? There we go. Aha! All right. All right. So this is where it gets a little bit different, and this is where these two buttons deviate from each other, because we need to go in and tell the computer exactly what command or what function is going to house our command when we click on the play button, or when we click on the quit button. Excuse me. Now we don't necessarily have to have a new script, okay? But we do have to have a separate function, okay? Because we don't want to load a level, we want to quit our game, right? Now this function can stay on the exact same game object and script that we were using for our play button. So let's load it in here real fast. It's going to be the play button. However, if we return to MonoDevelop and look at the script that we're using, I don't want to point the clicker to this thing, right? That's not what I'm after. I want it to look at a different function. And you can actually create custom functions in here. It doesn't really matter. What's most important is the name or the command that you fire off. So let's just call this exit game. Okay, custom function. Have to follow the correct syntax order, though. So on function exit game, what would you imagine we're going to do? We're going to quit the game, right? Unsurprisingly, now here's the command that allows you to quit the game pretty easily. We still need to go into the application world. Application, that's not how you spell application. Application, and then we're going to do, unsurprisingly, .quit. Open and close parentheses, and then we'll end the line with a semicolon. Let's save it. Let's triple check to make sure I got the syntax right, because I'm shrouded with doubt at the moment. No, I had it right. I should trust myself a little bit more directly. Okay. Let's save it. We'll return back to the quit button in the Unity inspector. Let's start wiring this together, because we don't want it to do the on mouse down function on button play controller. What do we want to do? Exit game, right? So this is the one that I just wrote, exit game. It's the contents of the game. Go. That one plays it. I shouldn't have clicked on it. Oop. What happened here? Oh, for whatever reason, it took off that one. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you do have to have it on a step. No, I was right. That's a bug, I think. When I duplicated this game object, it unhooked all of the function commands in those UI settings on button play. That wasn't very nice. Let's try it again. Okay, that one works. It plays the game. Okay, let's try it one more time with the quit button. Now, unsurprisingly, quit doesn't do a single thing, right? And here's why. In order for application.quit to work, we need to have an application. Remember, we're only previewing our game inside of Unity, right? We actually haven't built the application. So let's do an official build of the game real fast and see what we get. Just triple check my build settings before I go. Yep. We'll build it. Just put this on the desktop. My test app. Okay, there we go. Let's rock and roll. Let's take a look-see at it. Get out of the way, build settings. Bye-bye. Here's the actual test app that I just created. Let's just launch it real fast. Boom! We get our main menu first, which is what we're after. Okay. Now, if I were to play the game, whoop, excellent. There's everything there. Now, unfortunately, at this moment, I had to relaunch the app to test to see if our quit button works. And the app quit. Perfect. So it works. Awesome sauce. As we get closer to the end of the semester, and once we have a little bit more experience, we'll start talking about how we can create like an escape menu. There's actually a lot that goes on behind the scenes when you hit the escape button, because you got to pause the state of the entire game, draw the menu, draw the buttons. It's interesting, actually. There's a lot that goes into it. We're not quite ready for that yet, but that's definitely on the docket of things to explore as we get to the end of the quarter. All right, so let's take this into action a little bit more directly. And let's load in level 1. Because what I want to have in here is that I want to have a counter, a simple counter. We're going to create a GUI, some graphical user interface text elements that's going to respond and describe the current state of a variable, right? Because if you remember the conditions of our game here, we need to collect 3 red boxes before the blue sphere gets destroyed, right? It'd be great to be able to communicate pretty directly with our player the progress on this quest, okay? So let's go in and create a GUI system real fast that allows us to do this, okay? This is where it gets a whole lot of fun, okay? So let's do it. Let's make a UI, and I'm simply going to start with text. Believe it or not, this entire thing begins and ends with text. This is going to be a counter. It's not going to be a button, so we don't need to add that button component to it. We do need to add some scripts to it so they can access information on our global variable warehouse and pull that information into the string, into the actual text category itself. Let's create the button first, let's create the text. What should we, here, let's use Comic Sans, because why not? Let's make it pretty big. We're also going to make how big do we want it? I want it pretty big, I think. Yeah, somewhere right around there. New text, that's good. What should we have it say? Boxes? Boxes, yeah, that's good. Let's give it a nice, fun color. How about white? Oh, that gets lost pretty quickly, unsurprisingly. So let's put it back to black. All right. Okay. One thing that I would encourage you to look at, I think it's under the add component thing. This is something to play around with under the UI section. I remember seeing this a while ago. Oh, it's under the effects category. This is where you can do like drop shadows and stuff. we're really going to make our graphic designers hate us, right? Because not only are we using Comic Sans, we're adding a drop shadow. Yeah, I know, right? Let's see if we can make it work here. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. There it is. It's kind of hard to see. Yes. There we go. There's our lovely drop shadow in the bottom left-hand corner of our scene. I believe you can also go in and begin to blur it somehow, but that's good enough for today. All right. So there's our text element here. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we need to make a connection between this text element here, or more specifically, what we need to make a connection with in script and by our code is to this input box right here. Because I want to dynamically change what's being created in this input box, okay? Boxes is a good start, but I need to append this with with the current state of my integer variable, right? My cube's point variable, I think is what it's called, right? And this is where it gets fun. Okay, so let's make a new script. And let's just rename this here. So this is UI. Some people put GUI, which is fine. GUI, and then we'll just call this boxes. Okay. That way we know it's a GUI game object. That's its role, and it's describing the box's state. Okay. And let's create a new script. And I think I'm going to name this script GUI boxes controller. All right. Let's open it up in Monitor Develop and see what it is that we need to see. Now, there's a couple things in here that we need to do. And we saw this actually in practice a couple of weeks ago when we were interactively changing the color of our cube. We were hitting the Q key on our keyboard over and over and over again. And we were changing the color of that cube. Do you remember that? That was a good one, right? And the first thing that we had to do in that with code is access and grab the component on the game object that's responsible for actually driving the value itself, okay? So we need to get the component, right? And more specifically, if we jump back over here into, we need to get the text component, that thing right there. We need to grab that entire component and then the text field inside of it so that we can change it, okay? Let's do it real fast, okay? All right, oops, a little too close perhaps. All right, so here's what we're going to do initially. The first thing that we're going to create is a variable, because we're going to have a lot of, we're going to be accessing this text component, this UI text component often. It'd be great to be able just to distill that long line of code down into a word. Let's make a variable, let's call this my text, okay? And it's initially going to be UI.text, okay? So we're saying that it's very specifically UI information, okay? Now, the first thing that we need to do when the game starts, so on function awake, is go in and populate my text with something. We have to give it a value, give it some meaning and purpose inside of the larger context of our game. So here's what we're going to do. Much like we did with when we were switching the colors of the cube, we went get renderer, right? Now we're going to do get component. Actually, we did get component.renderer, excuse me. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to set the my text variable to get component. And then in parentheses, okay? Which one are we going to get? We're going to get UI.text, okay? Now, if you think about what we're trying to accomplish here, what we're asking the computer to do is to go into this UI game object. And Unity understands that this thing right here, is a UI game object, right? So we're saying, hey, UI game object. And then specifically the text component on the UI game object, I'm going to snag you and influence you with code. So we're getting very, very specific here, okay? This UI.text is the entire component, game component. So this includes everything to the text input field, to the font, to the line width, everything. We're grabbing all that data and we're storing it into the word my text. All All right, so what are we going to do with this? Well, on every frame of the game, we need to go in and drive an action, okay? And let's just test it real fast to see if this works, okay? So we're going to do my text. I'm going to copy, paste it down here so I don't mess up the spelling. It's Friday. It's Friday afternoon. The chance of me misspelling something is high, okay? So we're going to grab the entirety of that UI text component every frame, okay? And then we're going to get a little bit more granular, a little bit more specific. And we're going to say, hey, I just want to get the text input field. So what we're accessing here is this, okay? We grab this at the beginning of the game, the entire component. Now we're accessing what's going inside of here, the text input channel. Okay. So what are we going to set it to? Let's do this. Let's just test it. And in parentheses, of course, a semicolon. Let's just change it to red boxes. Okay. Now this is different than what I had previously written. Let's save it. Jump back over into Unity real fast. Okay, let's do this. Let's just empty out the text input field in our UI component. Okay. Now there's nothing. Okay, it's empty down here. If we've done our job right, we've got to associate this script. Here it is. So I want to take my GUI boxes controller, drag and drop it onto my GUI boxes game object to associate and create the relationship between the two. I like to double check to make sure it's on there, and it didn't go on there. Or did it? No. There we go. All right. Okay, let's give it a try. We play the game here. Poof, mission accomplished. Okay? Now, it wrote red boxes for me. We're now affecting the input channel of that text component. I like this. Let's review this structure one more time just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Stop the game. And note, over here inside of this text component, we have a text input field. It's empty. There's nothing in it, right? We can put gobbledygook in there. It does not matter, okay? Because we're going to overwrite what's in there. You can see the gobbledygook down there. And inside the code, we're grabbing that entire UI text component. And then on every frame, we're saying, hey, grab the text input field and change it, set it to this, red boxes, okay? Doesn't matter what's in that, what we originally placed in here, as I have now, because when I play the game, it gets replaced. Okay? Now this is great, because now we're controlling through code what's showing up inside of our UI element. That means that this is now a dynamic environment. Okay? So let's add some stuff in here. Now that we've proven that we're controlling that text input field with code, let's add one more layer to it. Because remember, the idea behind this is that we have a counter show up inside of the screen itself, right? And we want to count how many red boxes that we've run into. Luckily for us, in the system that we've created, we're already capturing that information inside of our global vars, right? We already have a variable here that's capturing and updating its value based on the collision events that are happening in our game, right? So we see a tap into this. Anyone want to take a guess as to where we're going with this? Let's go back into GUI Boxes controller. And here's what we're going to do. Of course, red boxes is going to remain. But after the quotes, here's what we're going to add. Plus, okay, global vars dot cube points. I just want to make sure I'm spelling everything correctly before. You got it. So now I'll save that. So when I start the game, the text in that text component is going to read red boxes, and then we're also going to append it and say, hey, go grab the current value of that global variable, of that static variable that's on my global var script. Let's jump back into Unity and see if it works. We know we'll have mission success if it says 0, which is what we have, right? Because the default value here of that variable is 0. We set it to 0 when the game first starts. Let's go grab a box and see if we can capture this. Capture a change. Bloop. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Cool, huh? Pretty cool. What am I doing? I'm hitting the wrong button. That's what I'm doing. Text elements inside of Unity are a powerful, powerful addition. This is where our game really becomes something a little bit more than a fancy walkthrough, because now we're creating a feedback loop with our gamers themselves. We're presenting them with some information. They're making decisions and actions based off of what the game is telling them, and we're crafting something more complex. Neato, huh? Neato. As I did last week, I'll make sure all these scripts get placed into the Week 10 module on Canvas. So if you want to incorporate portions, if not all of the code into your demo, that'd be good. Okay. Yes, sir.
So clearly there is a way to, like, let's say I want to make a health bar.
Yeah.
Graphic.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make every single section of it, or is there a way to make it drop off?
Yeah, no, the answer to your question is no, you don't have to make every single little section. You make one section, and then you repeat that one section over and over and over and over and over and over again to get a bar. I was going to save this for a little bit later, but you can start to see the underpinning of that. I got to remember if it's image or raw image, but it's one of those two. Okay, we're going to import in just a little sliver, and then basically, I think it's under the wrap function. Let's just see real fast. Yeah. That's another way of doing it, because you can do some masking in there too. Right, yep, another way of doing it. 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. Yep. I haven't played around with the masking system in this version of Unity. I know in the previous, kind of generation of the UI tools, masking was not easy. I'm hoping they made it a lot better now. Just a proof of concept here. Now there's a lot of code that goes into the growth of that bar. What? No. Okay. What? Okay. This is driving me crazy. Let's just make the width 50 pixels. The height will be 150. Wow, Photoshop is getting so bloated these days. Oops, I didn't want to hit that. I hit the wrong button. Just make a solid color, get red. Save it as a nice little PNG. All right, so let's do this. Of course Unity is going to crash on me just now. It's awesome. That just makes my day. That brings a warm smile to my face. That kind of drives me crazy a little bit. Of course, it's at the end of the example, right? Always happens. I'll let you play around with it so you guys can figure it out, but I believe it's in that you can wrap an image and have it repeat over and over and over again. It's a great way to very quickly create a health bar. All right, questions about what we talked about today, the UI system. Yeah, everyone's starting to figure it out? You understand it? Yes, sir.
At the beginning, when you set it up, were you using like a plane to describe the object, or what was the original game object called?
For the UI system?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look specifically at it, you go into the game object pull-down menu, and there's a UI section. So there's no plane. It's its own separate kind of independent entity inside of the Unity system. Yep, there it is. UI, and then I did text, buttons, all sorts of stuff. Let me import that. Oh, good. Let's do image. Oh, it needs it to be. Here we go. It needs to be a sprite. That's right. I remember seeing this. There we go. There it is, just chilling in my scene. It's way over there. It's gigantic right now. That's all right. Yeah, it's also smashed in its height and width. Let's see, the width was 50, the height was 150. There we go. Now it's back to its original proportions. Okay. Yeah, I'm very, very healthy right now. And then tiled. Yep. Looks like you want to tile a sprite with no border. It would be more efficient to convert the sprite to an advanced texture clip. That okay. I would like to do that. Looks like they've changed some stuff in here. Sprite mode. Yeah, I'll have to figure this out. This is a little bit different now in their new system. But I'm on to something here. Yep, I'll let you figure that part out or explore it a little bit more in detail. All right, questions about the UI stuff we talked about today? No? Everyone good? Kind of understanding it? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm guessing using the scripting, you can tie almost anything to anything. Meaning that you could like make the color of that change and the number of it change depending on how many times you hit a damage zone or something like that.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. What's important is that we have an understanding of where these values and these variables are living and then how to access them. I like having a big warehouse of information. Makes it a little bit easier to access stuff and to understand where those variables are being stored and what their current values are. Other questions? All right, let's take a break. Let's take a break.